Edward Prutschi joins the show, criminal lawyer in Toronto, very familiar with the Supreme Court case today, and I know he's a busy man, so I appreciate him stepping out to chat with us. How are you?
No problem. Good morning, Gary.
So did the Supreme Court get it right?
So I actually think they've been very creative about this and did reach the right decision on both counts, both on what the law ought to be and on what they ought to do with this particular woman, because that was what was so complicated about this. I think everyone in their heart of hearts and even intellectually didn't want to see this particular woman prosecuted or convicted under the specific circumstances of this case. But on the other hand, they also didn't want to send a message that this kind of conduct was okay. And so what they've done is, I think somewhat cleverly, split the difference and basically said this does not meet the test of duress. It's not the appropriate way to deal with these things. And were somebody to take that action again in the future, they can certainly be prosecuted. But in her particular circumstance, after having been through a trial and an appeal and all of the scenarios that sort of come behind that, they ordered a judicial stay, which doesn't mean she's found not guilty, but means that in perpetuity, she'll never be prosecuted for this.
Okay, so basically she's off the hook and we're changing the rules so we don't have to face this question again.
It's effectively a message to everybody else saying, look, you're not going to get away with this a second time. But in this case, there was a gray area. She paid the price in terms of having to go through the disasters of a trial and an appeal, as well as the particular circumstances of this guy who had been terrorizing her for all these years. So we're not going to pursue her any further. But let this be a message to everybody else. Don't try that again.
Okay, so the definition of duress has been narrowed then. Am I right about that?
So it's really what they've done is that the duress does not apply in this case at all. They've said that the appropriate test ought to be to talk about self-defense. So rather than saying that somebody is pressed into doing this kind of conduct, that only occurs when you are literally being forced to act against an innocent party. When instead your argument is saying that somebody has been so awful to you that you fear for your own life and your own safety, you're effectively in a self-defense situation. And for it to be self-defense, the threat has to be imminent and perceived to be imminent, and your response has to be proportionate.
Okay, so there's nothing imminent about going and trying to hire a hitman then?
No, and particularly the facts of her case were even more difficult because there were 3 different attempts. A lot of that doesn't come out in the media reports, but she had made 3 attempts to hire a hitman over a period of time, and some had backed out, and others had requested more money and such. So this was clearly a planned and deliberate act over a lengthy period of time.
You know, Edward, my heart goes out to anybody in an abusive situation, and I understand what the Supreme and I like your description of it, that they were creative in processing it this way. Please tell me this isn't a regular occurrence in Canada, that this doesn't happen on a regular basis, that abused spouses are trying to hire hit people? Tell me this doesn't happen every day.
I can assure you that this is not a common occurrence. That's not to say that in a lesser extent, obviously spouse abuse is a very common occurrence, unfortunately, far too common. But situations in which somebody feels so pressured to react in this kind of way and go out and hire a hitman is very unusual. And I will say, within my own practice, for those people who are listening, hiring a hitman, in my experience as a criminal lawyer, almost inevitably leads to police involvement. The vast majority of so-called hitmen out there seem to be RCMP undercover officers, and that's, of course, exactly what happened here.
Wow. Well, to me, it was a fascinating whirlwind of a story from a media perspective. But from her perspective and her daughter's perspective, no whirlwind here. She's been stuck in this muck for a while.
Well, for her, it's been an absolute nightmare. And the Supreme Court they paid more than just lip service to that in criticizing quite strongly the actions of police and the actions of Crown prosecutors, saying that it never should have gotten to a point where police were jumping on investigating and creating a sting operation to prevent her attempted murder, but they seemed to be completely unresponsive to the 9 or so attempts that she had made to get police protection for herself and for her daughter.
Absolutely amazing stuff. Edward, thank you. Good to get you on the show today. Appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
Bye-bye. Edward Prutschi is a criminal attorney in Toronto who's been following this case closely.